Welcome to Talent Takeover,
Unfiltered.
When it comes to working hard and keeping it real, we know our shit. Self-care, happiness, inner peace, and time. I'm Brianna Rooney, and this is Taylor Bradley.
Hey, y'all.
And we have thrived in chaos and turned it into an art form. So Taylor, what are we doing here today?
We're here to give you a raw, under-the-hood view of all things recruiting and finally give credit where credit is due to a long underrated industry that's full of quote-unquote experts.
All right. Well, then let's take this show to the road. Hello. Welcome to Talent Takeover Unfiltered.
Did you happen to catch the last episode of Talent Takeover Unfiltered? If not, you're going to want to check it out before listening to part 2. Let me fill you in just in case. Brianna and Taylor shared their thoughts on interview projects. Are they just ways for companies to get free work from people that are interviewing? Can you push back on them and still land that dream job? Well, in today's episode, they're going to up the ante with their thoughts on interview assessments. All right, now that you're filled in, let's dive in.
So like with recruiting assessments, so something that was on here was like, once, you've sent over your candidates to show that these are the candidates that I sourced, right? That matched the profile that you gave me. Scheduling a call with the recruiter and doing an intake call and discuss the candidates that you found. What do you think about that? That added layer of like, here's the assessment. You not only need to find the candidates. And so there's two parts of this question. So what do you think about that in general? And then what do you think about that whenever you are asking somebody who has like 10 plus years of recruiting experience to do this?
How long does it take?
I would say at least 2 hours total.
Oh, that's too long. I don't think any assessment should be longer than 60 minutes.
But do you think that a recruiter should have to go through and show that they can source and do an intake if they've got over 10 years of experience? Like, shouldn't you assume to a certain extent?
Yeah, but I've gotten assumptions. I've gotten caught with those for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just. I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one. So there was this recruiter who, on paper, was a no-brainer hire for us. Okay. This person worked at our biggest client and worked there for a year. And it was a referral internally. So it's like, look, we got two things going for this person, right? And so I was almost kind of like, do we even need to interview this person? Like, this is a no fucking brainer, right? Like, I got two things that are telling me, fuck yeah. Well, thank God I interviewed this person. Like, it was one of the worst interviews I have ever even been through. And I was coming in like, I just wanted to hire the person. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, here, so then I started to be like, oh wow, Brianna, like maybe this person's nervous. Okay. So you were just coming in hot. So I said, hey, I know you're at this current client of ours. What roles do you fill there? Okay. And the person told me, I'm like, great. So you fill 2 of them. Show me 3 candidates per role that you feel would be a really good fit, and just tell me why. Just take, the person was on site. This is, when we're very much, have people come in.
Okay.
So they're on site. We gave them their own desk. He had the computer. We closed it up. Like, we totally let this person be by himself and just no anxiety. Right.
Right.
I come back and I go, okay, so please tell me who you found. And this person gave me like the cream of the crop, FANG, too expensive, like all of those things, right? And so I was like, okay, let me clarify. I don't need the cream of the crop. I need people that you really truly believe based off of the salary range you have, like all these things. I need real candidates, because there is something to say, like, the cream of the crops don't always go, they're like too good, right? So I redid it. And so it came back. It was the worst. I was like, are you really? So then I was like, okay, you've worked with this client for a year. How many placements have you made? Because then I was thinking to myself, I got to dig here, because what the fuck's wrong, right?
Yeah.
And they was like, no placements. I'm like, in a year? I'm sorry. So then, such an asshole, but that I was literally shocked. I was like, and they're happy with you? Like, that was like my initial question. I was like, they're happy with you? And they're like, yeah, because they pay more attention to my activity. Then I'm like, what? And I was like, just mind blown. Okay. So if I did not do that assessment, I would have had the worst recruiter on my team in the face of the universe. It would have been awful. So I don't know. So I'm pro assessment. So I do now intake. No, I think that's a very basic job. But if I'm having someone come in and source, I think sourcing is a really, really, really big deal that not a lot of people do well.
Yeah,
so
no,
sourcing,
I agree with
I'm
the
for
sourcing.
sure.
I agree with
but
the sourcing.
intake,
It's the intake. I was like, yeah, it's taking it a little too far. If they deliver on part 1 of the assessment, you got to assume with that background, they could do part 2, which is the intake.
I think the an additional assessment is only because one, your spidey senses are going off. Like there has to be something off, right?
Yeah.
Or like maybe you had like some backdoor reference and you're like, oh wait, shoot, hold on. Let me dig a little bit more. Or maybe you found out the person was fired. Or maybe, like there's I think a couple of other things that would have to play into that. But for basic practice, you can't do an intake, we have a problem.
Yeah, I completely agree. So going back to what you said, like 2 hours too long, 45 minutes too long. So what do you think is the appropriate amount of time for an assessment in the interview process? Or do you think that varies dependent upon the role?
It varies depending on the role, but I think it has to be under 60 minutes. But I think what would really be best practice for me would be like 15 to 30 minutes. Yeah. I think that's like very much like you should sign up and assume you're going to spend X. I would say if you're sending your resume and it's you're truly spot on, this is like all of these things are lining up, I would assume that you're spending 4 hours in that interview process.
Okay. And do you give them whenever you're giving an assessment, do you think there's a best practice on like the turnaround time?
I think that depends on how many candidates you have and again, expectations. So let's just say you came in the interview process and I was like, hey, I'm just letting you know we're really close to filling this role. Like we need to turn around and we're going to give an offer out within 1 to 2 weeks. So I'm going to need this within 24 hours or, like whatever it is. But again, it just goes to expectations. And I think timing is everything.
Yeah.
So if you're just letting them know, like, look, we're trying to fill this and we have people to fill it. And I'm sorry if this doesn't work for you, but I think then the candidate shouldn't be upset, like for a fast turnaround. If this is how, but again, it depends on how they laid it out there.
Yeah, the communication aspect of it.
The communication. Yeah. If like you're just like new to this and I didn't say shit, right? I didn't tell you what's going on. As far as you're the only one, because I feel like even with dating, we like to think we're the only one, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
No one loves me like this. I just killed it, but I just said, hey, Taylor, you know what? I'm going to need this 24 hours and it's going to take you like 2 hours. You'd be like, even if it takes you 30 minutes, I think if you are employed, that is not fair.
I agree.
But again, companies have to do what companies have to do if they have other people in the pipeline that they need to, get through.
Yeah. And I think as going back to like, as a candidate, you have to make sure that works for you or it doesn't and understand that could be an indication of what it's like to work there. And I don't mean that in an entirely negative way. It's just like there could be times that you have projects that you need to work on after hours or that have a tight turnaround timeline. But I think if you're communicating it the way that you did, like that's where I'm saying is like, that's a perfect and right way to do it is like, here's the why, and we need it within 24 hours. Here's the timeline. But giving you the context as to why this is not normally how fast our interview process goes, but we're very close to making an offer. Like, I think if it's laid out as like an exception, then I think it's more digestible of like, oh, okay, this isn't because they have no respect for work-life balance. And they're just like, hey, do this in 5 minutes, regardless of whatever the fuck you have going on. Kids, other job, whatever. They don't care. I think that's completely different. I think setting the scene of like, hey, if you're interested, we have to get this back in 24 hours. I know it's a tight timeline and here's why. But I think that just makes all the difference. The communication aspect of it. And then like, also, I think it's if you're going to have an assessment in the interview process, I think you need to set that scene in the first call as a recruiter. Like you need to say, here's what our 100%. Process is going to be. You're going to meet with so-and-so. And then after that, if that goes well, we're going to have you do XYZ assessment. Like I think you should set that expectation at the very first call that you talk with them, that there is an assessment and where it falls in the process.
You know what? This is... So I'm giving you jazz hands right now. So anyone that you can watch this on Millionaire Recruiter YouTube, enjoy that. So I love this because this is where strategic talent advisors come into play. What drives me bonkers is fake work.
Yeah.
Okay. So like recruiters on the other end, they're like, oh, I'm just going to do all of these intake calls. I'm going to put all these people through the process. And I'm hitting my numbers, KPIs, whoop, whoop. When in reality, if you're literally just putting up numbers to put up numbers, and if you are not setting those expectations and making sure every fucking candidate you are talking to is going to do X, Y, Z, then get them out of the interview process.
Right.
You know, it's like, that's how you have to start weeding people out. And I really think that if you're the recruiter that does this, AI bots will never fucking replace us because we can save so much time just by this small amount thing have done.
Completely agree. Have you ever taken an assessment?
Well, you have to understand. So I'm going to say no, but I haven't gone through an interview process since I was 21 years old. I am now 39. So
I didn't know if you took anything you implemented internally.
Okay. Yes. So I've taken our own assessments. Yes, absolutely. I've taken the VARC, the high five. So basically how we learn. What else? I've done the emotional intelligence assessments. I've done all of those things, but like I sought after and did it. It wasn't something like, hey, someone's like, hey, you have to do this.
Yeah. So how would you feel if you were interviewing and somebody told you that they needed you to do a 30, 60, 90-day plan? I'm just curious, what would you do?
Oh, so the curiosity killed this cat. I would dig a little bit, but I wouldn't fucking do it. You know, no.
I would dig, but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would like want to learn and like hear about like all of these things. I mean, just to what you said, right? Like I would ask so many goddamn questions.
Yeah.
And then I would say, hey, look, this is something that I would do when I start. And I already have like ideas for that. And I'm happy to walk you through my ideas like with you and I, because here's the thing. If you're going to make me waste my time, I'm going to make goddamn sure you're wasting just as much time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, I will talk you through it. So I now know like I'm getting more FaceTime with you, getting more likability, but I am not putting it into this giant project and presenting it. I'm going to talk you through it. And then we can dig, and then I'm going to talk about, it's really important that, you know, we communicate. It's really important we're on the same page. It's important that we work it out. This isn't just something I need to do. This is something we have to do. And, you know, stuff like that.
So would you do it if they were paying you to do it?
If they were paying me to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they're paying me to do it, then I'm going to do it really well.
Yeah. Are you going to set your hourly rate? Or if they're like, hey, this is what we pay for this?
Oh, if it's way below my hourly rate, then I'm going to tell them what my hourly rate is. Yeah. But I also have to realize that it depends. Am I passively looking or am I actively looking? So do I have a job or do I not have a job? Right. Totally. So then you have to think that your hourly rate is no longer your accurate hourly rate if you don't have a job. So I would take like, let's just say, you know, like for example, like my hourly rate's 400. Well, if I don't have a job, I'm going to say my hourly rate's 200. I would probably cut that in half because technically I'm not making anything.
So your hourly rate is technically zero.
Well, okay. Yes.
We have to fuck with each other or we'll lose it. We just got to laugh. So by that same logic, you're at a zero.
No, I told you I'm half.
Totally get it. Makes sense. It totally makes sense. Good. Know your self-worth.
Yeah, thank you.
But we do have some tips for people that if you get an assessment and you do decide to do it, and again, we're not discouraging or encouraging it. It's definitely situational. It depends on what it is. But understand the requirements. As you mentioned, like poke holes in it. Before you start it, ask all the questions, ensure you thoroughly understand the requirements and the expectations. And it's okay to seek clarification. I know a lot of people feel like, okay, well, they're going to think I'm an idiot if I ask a bunch of questions. Absolutely not. No. You should definitely ask questions. Another thing that you need to make sure you do is show your process. So if the assessment involves problem solving, like think back to what they make you do at school, like old school days, like elementary school, show your work.
No. Diego's going through that right now. He is pissed.
Yeah. I don't show your work. Mm-hmm. No. Don't just provide the solution, walk through your thought process, explain your approach and how you arrive at that conclusion. So that math that you were doing in elementary school, this is where it's applicable, where you got to show. Yeah, I know. I'm saying boo too. But this is where you got to show your thought process and walk through it. Demonstrate your best work. So it says treat assessments as you would any other job assignment. True. Strive for quality, attention to detail. Yeah.
Do you have that in there? Don't cheat. This is crazy. I've had even director of engineering get caught for cheating. It's bonkers to me. Don't cheat. They will find out.
They will find out. And eventually they'll find out. Even if it's not an engineering role and you cheat, like they're going to find out. Meet deadlines. So if there's a time constraint, make sure that you do the assessment within that deadline. I think you should, that's another one that you should really know. Like, what is the deadline? And I've had sometimes, like I've heard of people saying, well, we'd like for you to get it done in XYZ, but you have till XYZ, till Friday, but we'd like you to have it done by Wednesday.
I hate that. It's such a passive way to communicate. Like,
it
so
is.
On the flip side, like ask more questions. And going back really quickly, Taylor, to what you said, if I give someone something and they didn't ask questions, I'm actually upset.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, how did you not ask any questions? Like, there's no way in hell I explained this like that well.
Really? I feel like it depends on what it is. If it's like hey, source me 20 people for this and here's the role. I don't know. I may not have a lot of questions other than like, when do you need it by? So I think it depends on what the assessment is.
But there's some question, right? There's at least one question. There has to be.
I mean, you'd hope so. But then if there's a million of them, I'd also be like, did you read it at all?
Fair. Totally fair. Oh yeah. If I'm getting asked a question where it's actually documented, I'm pissed. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. So it has to be truly a question that you have not been provided an answer to, even if it was something that you were some in-depth 30-page thing you had to read. If the answer's in there, don't ask a question about it, because you are going to that's going to come back to bite you negatively.
Yeah. Control F it.
Yeah. Communicate challenges. Big one. If you encounter challenges during the assessment, you need to communicate them. And I really liked this one because it says it shows transparency and your ability to handle unexpected obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I like that one. Like, communicate if you're having any issues while coming up with whatever challenge or information you're supposed to. So I thought those were all really good tips. And then we'll get right into like our best and final tip. Dun, dun, dun. The Broke the Boss tip. So by understanding the purpose behind assessments and approaching them with professionalism and enthusiasm, you can use this part of the interview process to showcase your skills and stand out in the hiring process. So I think the biggest takeaway I had for that one is enthusiasm. I'm like
that. I was just about to say, I'm like, enthusiasm. Thank you.
Yes.
That's what I got from that. Yeah.
That's what I got from that too, is like, you need to understand the purpose of why you're doing the assessment. I think that's really important. Like, understand what are they going to do with it? What purpose does it serve in this process? What skills are you gauging? I think that's really important. So understanding the purpose is going to help you have enthusiasm towards doing it. If you're like, why the fuck am I doing this? Just like in any job that you have, like at your current employer, like current job, if you don't understand why you're doing something, I mean, obviously you're not going to do it with as much enthusiasm. If it feels like it's a box you need to check or just like a task you have to do. But this one I think is really good to like understand what the purpose is, how they're going to gauge you by the results. I think that's totally fair, is to ask a ton of questions about like how are the results gauged?
Yeah. And you know what? Something we didn't talk about, I just thought of right now, is save your project, save your work, because and add it to your portfolio. Because what I actually had some people do, as long as like it's not there's like not an NDA or something in process, but keep it for your next interview, because now you have a project to show.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful. But I think on the other end, like, obviously, well, I was going to say depending on what you're applying for, but for the most part, there are some projects you can really keep in your arsenal during this moment, and just kind of maybe you even send it like with your resume or in the first call or something like that. Hey, I just want to show you this.
Love that.
It shows you're proactive. It shows that you're passionate. If you have projects for your job, it means like it's not just a job for you.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And do it all with enthusiasm.
Always.
All right. Thanks, guys, for listening. We appreciate it. Subscribe, like, review, text us at 10 p.m. Oh, wait, that was.
Oh, God, no, never. Good luck with your hunt, too. We know it's hard. So, any questions, what we're having fun with, too, is just answering, ad hoc questions, right? You want us to just hop on here and do it, then, getting inappropriate.
Oh, I didn't even think about it.
Down the rabbit hole. I'm the only one that got it.
Yeah. Okay. So hop on here and do it.
Just hop right on and do it.
Thanks, y'all.
See you next week.